let's give some health to our player game object. Okay, so if I hit this play button in the top, this petrol enemy just attacking our player game object. Okay, but we before we just damage our player game object, we need to give some health to our player game object. Okay, so let's do that. So let's open up our player script, or what else you can do, you can go ahead and create a separate script, something like you can call it player health. It's totally up to you what you want to call. Okay, I will go with this player script. I'm just gonna go with player script. So let's open that up by double clicking on it. Okay, you can create a separate script and attach that script to your this player game object. Okay, so let's give some help. So let's go to top of our class. Okay, let's make serialized field. Okay, serialized field. Serialized field basically means it's public. Okay, it public, even you type after it private, it will be public. But the thing is, the catch is that you never gonna access this field from another class. You will able to see this field right over underneath our this player script. Okay, but you won't able to access this field from any script. Let me show you how. So let's create a serialized field private. Okay, let's call it int will be, so our max will be whole numbers like 1 2 3 4 like that, so that's why integer. Let's call it max underscore health. Okay, and by default I wanna give 5 amount of health to our player game object. Means enemy game object just need to attack our player game object 5 times, 1 2 3 4 and 5, and then it will lose all of his health. Okay, close that off with semicolon. Control S to save your code. Okay, and let's go to Unity now. Even we made that field private, but we type serialized field on top of it. Okay, so we will able to see the field underneath our player script, but the catch is that we not able to access that field from another class. Okay, so in this way the field remain a good. Okay, instead of making it public, you can make some variable serialized field. It's a pretty good way, and your code will be clean and nice. Okay, just do it, just go ahead with that, and you will able to understand. Okay, so control S on your keyboard whatever you have done and go to Unity. uh, So as you can see, we are able to see this max health field in our script, player script. Even we made that field private, but on top of it, we wrote in serialized field. So that's the catch. It's make private field public. But the problem is, let's suppose I wanna access that field from over in petrol enemy script. So let's open that up. Okay, open that up. Let's access that script. Okay, so we need to go over to player. Let's do it or check it over here. So we know in player script we have, so player dot, as you can see, if I type max health, we are not able to see that field. Okay, we should able to see that field max health, because I say we type serialized field. So this one over here makes private field public, but the catch is that you not able to gonna able to access this field from another class, but you will expect to see this field in your inspector. Okay, it will be public, so I will remove this now. Okay, so I hope you get the idea how serialized field works. Okay, field, so we have given 5 amount of health to our player game object. Okay, so as you can see, max health. So we also need to subtract this max health from our player game object. Basically player game object will take damage. Okay, so let's make a take damage function. So let's go to top of our let's go to bottom of our script, and over here we will make public. Okay, public void, let's call this one take underscore damage. Okay, it's totally up to you want what you want to call. Make some curly brackets and as a integer value. Okay, I will pass a variable in argument and let's call it a damage. Okay, a damage. So why this field we make it public, because when the enemy attacks from there we want to call this take damage function, and take damage function will subtract from our max health by this amount of damage. Let's assume as a damage parameter we pass 1. Okay, so what we will do, we will subtract from our max health minus equal max health minus equal damage. Okay, damage, and close that off with semicolon. So let's assume damage over here is 1. Okay, and we know by default we have given 5 amount of health to our player game object. Okay, so if we call this function for the first time, okay, take damage function, it will subtract from our max health by this amount of damage. Okay, so 5 minus 1 will be 4. If we call this function, so player max health will shrink down to 4, and if we call this function second time, so 4 minus 1 will be 3, and then third time 3 minus 1 will be 2, and then fourth time 2 minus 1 will be 1, and fifth time 1 minus 1 will be 0. So our max health of player will go to 0. Let's assume we already have 0 health. Okay, max health is 0, so 0 minus 1 will be minus 1, so it will, this max health will go to negative value. So before we will check, okay, if its max health is already 0 or not. If it's the game sorry, if it's the case, then we need to destroy our player game object, or we need a game over screen, you can say. Okay, because player loses all of his health. Okay, so before we subtract, we need to check if the max health is already 0 or not. If it's not, then we need to subtract, else we don't need to subtract. So let's suppose we max health have 0, so 0 minus 1 over here will be as a damage parameter, we assume 1. Okay, it can be any value you want it, you can pass as a damage argument 2, so it will subtract from your max health by 2. Okay, so 5 minus 2 will be minus 3, but as a damage parameter I will pass 1. Okay, so let's suppose the max health is 0. Okay, so 0 minus 1 will be minus 1. Okay, if we call this function, so it will go to negative value. So before it goes to negative value, we need to check. Okay, we will check if max health, okay, is already 0, is lesser than or equal to 0. So if that is the case, means player don't have any health, so we need to we need a game over screen, or we need to destroy our player game object. Okay, right after it, and make some curly brackets. Okay, so max health, if the max health is already 0, okay, or equal to 0, in that situation we should not subtract anymore, player is died. Okay, or we should not subtract, so we will type return. Okay, and close that up with semicolon, and we do know that after return, whatever line of code you just write, it's not gonna be execute or call. So in this case, this line of code will stop right there when this max health becomes 0. Oh, okay, we typing return, and we know after return this line of code will not be execute, means subtraction will be stopped right there when the max health reaches 0. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. So Control S on your keyboard to save your code, and let's move to Unity. But we also need to call that take damage function. We made the function, but we also need to call the function. Okay, we also need to call the function. Before we do that, we will go to update function. Okay, why update function? And we know update function runs every single frame. Okay, so we will check if the max health of player game object is already 0 or not. If 0, then what we want to do, we want to destroy our player game object, or we want a game over screen. Before it, let's suppose let's print out a message in the console, player died. Okay, so let's check. Okay, so if max health, is lesser than, okay, lesser than or equal to 0. So if that is the case, why we not doing over here, you can you might say, okay, because this update function runs every single frame, so this will be accurate. Okay, it will check every single frame if the player max health is 0 or not. So if is the case, if max health is lesser than or equal to 0, means player died, player loses all of his health. So let's print out a message in the console first. Okay, so for printing out we have to type debug.log. Okay, let's call it player died. Okay, player in quotation, you can you can say whatever you wanna say. Okay, and close that up with semicolon, control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. But the problem is that we need to call take damage function. Anyways, we're not calling that take damage function. Okay, so it will not subtract from our player game object, from max health of our player game object. Okay, so player max health will remain forever to 5. Okay, so if I select this player game object, as you can see now, if I hit this play button, okay, hit this play button, I just having the tea. So just wait for to compile, and as you can see, max health of player. I don't know why we are not able to see, but but I'm gonna go to debug mode. So as you can see, max health is still remain in 5 because we need to call that take damage function, and we know what take damage function is doing. It's just subtracting from our player max health by damage parameter. As a damage parameter, you can pass whatever you want to, whatever you wanna pass. Okay, so I will go to normal again. So we need to call this, but when we shoot, when the player sorry, this enemy game object is just attacking. Okay, right after that we need to call, as you can see, we need to call, if I select this petrol enemy game object and go to animation tab and then select player enemy attack, so something like over here we attacking, so this will be the correct time to call that take damage function of player. Okay, so player will take damage. So before that, basically we will create a circle around this enemy game object as like we did our player. Okay, we will create a point, from that point we will create a circle around that point, and if that circle collide with this player game object, then player should take damage, or we will call that take damage function from our player script, and we know what that function is doing. Okay, so let's do that. So let's create a point right over here. So right click on petrol enemy. Okay, then go to create empty game object and select this move tool and move it something like over here, and you can choose any gizmos you want in inspector. So I will choose this green one. Okay, green one, and let's call a game object. Instead of game object, let's call attack underscore point. Okay, attack underscore point. So from this point we will create a circle, and we will check if that circle collide this player game object. Okay, then this player should take damage. Okay, so let's open up our petrol enemy script, or you can create a separate script as well for this enemy petrol enemy attack. It's totally up to you. So let's open that up by double clicking on it. Okay, so to create a circle, so let's go to down bottom of our script. So let's create a function. Let's call public. Why we making public? Because I want to call this function right over here. Okay, so this will be correct time. So how we can call that? So go over to this frame, something like 6 frame or 8 frames. Okay, over here in the left side you can see add event. Okay, add event, just click on that, and over here you can select the function you want to call right over here. Okay, so that is the catch. So I will remove this now for now. Okay, so let's open up script one more time. Let's create a public void. Let's call it attack attack. Okay, attack and make first bracket and some curly brackets. What we want to do inside this function, basically we want to draw a circle from that attack point of our patrol enemy, and if that circle collide player game object, then player game object should take damage. Basically we will call that take damage function from our player script, and we know what that function is doing. It's just subtracting from our player max health by a damage parameter. Okay, so let's do that. To draw a circle we need to type physics 2d. Okay, physics 2d dot overlap circle, overlap circle. Okay, overlap circle, and this function over here physics 2d dot overlap circle, as a first argument it will take the position from where you want to create the circle, and the second thing it will take the radius. Okay, how much radius you want of that circle, and the third argument it will take the layer mask, basically which game object layer you want to target. So in our case we want to target our player game object, so we need to assign our player layer mask as a layer mask our player layer. So we need to assign those variable before we create the circle. Okay, so let's make a comment by double slash. Okay, let's go to top of our class. Okay, so let's make a serialized field private, and we do know it's make private field public. Okay, serialized field private, let's call this will be transform. Okay, transform, let's call this attack underscore point. Okay, attack underscore point. So firstly transform basically means position. Okay, you can say so we need this attack point position, basically that attack point, and the second thing we need radius. Okay, so let's make a one more serialized field private. Let's call this float, that will be float. Let's call it attack radius. Okay, attack radius, and by default you can give any value you like. I will give something like 1f, so 1 unit of radius we will have of that circle. Okay, and the third argument it will take the layer mask, basically which layer we want to target. Okay, so let's make another serialized field private. Okay, private layer mask, let's call it target layer, target underscore layer, or you can call it attack layer. Okay, target layer, so I already created, so I will call this one instead attack underscore layer. Okay, attack underscore layer. Control S to save your code. Okay, save your code. Let's move to Unity because we need to assign those field first: attack point, attack radius, and the layer mask. Layer mask basically means which layer you want to target. So in our case we want to target this player, so we need to assign this player as a player layer. So how we can do that, let me explain, just wait for compiling it. Okay, so if I select this patrol enemy game object first, as you can see attack point which says none, which is empty. So let's drag this attack point right there. Okay, we drag it attack point to attack point field. Now we have attack point, and over here attack layer it says nothing, so we will choose this player layer. Okay, so click on it. We don't have any player layer as you can see, so let's select this player game object, and we need to assign this player game object as a player layer because we want to target this player game object. To do so, go over to inspector. In the top right you can see layer which selected default. Click on it, click on add layer, and name the layer what you want. So we want to name it player. Okay, player layer or player. Save it, hit enter, and go back to that game object one more time and assign that layer which says default. Let's assign it to as a player. Now we assign it, I will do know this game object only. Okay, now we assign it this player as a player layer. So let's go to patrol enemy script one more time. As a attack layer we will choose now player. So this circle, that circle will only target that this player game object, not any other thing. Okay, or not any other game object. So let's open up our script one more time and let's remove these two slashes for now. So as a overlook, we know this function as a first argument it will take the position. So let's pass our attack point. Okay, attack point dot position, And the second thing or second argument, it will take the radius. So let's pass our attack radius. Okay, and the third argument, it will take the layer marks. So let's pass our attack layer, and we know as a attack layer we assign it our player, so player will take damage, or this circle will only check for that player, okay, not any other game object. So let's pass our attack layer because we assigned attack layer to our player. You can choose multiple layers, it's totally up to you, like you can choose this ground, but I will choose this player only. You can choose multiple as well, it's totally up to you, or whatever game object you want to target besides player. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. And this function over here can be true or false if the circle, okay, if the circle, okay, if the circle collide with this player game object, then this function over here will return us or give us true value, else this function will return us false. If that circle not colliding with our player layer or player game object, then this function over here will give us a false statement. Okay, so let's store the result into a variable. Okay, so that will be collided 2D variable. Okay, to storing info, collided 2D, let's call it call or hit, let's equal to set equal to this. Okay, I'm gonna call it call. Okay, so this call can be true or false. Okay, this call can be true or false because this function over here can be true or false. If the circle is really colliding with that player game object, then this function will be true, so the call over here will be true because we directly setting it or we storing the result into this collided 2D variable. Okay, and if the circle not colliding, then this over here call will be false. Okay, so we will check and next time we will in the next we will check if call, okay, if call is equals to true, or you can leave it like this, if call it also means true and make some curly brackets, mean the circle is really collided with that player game object, that means player should take damage. Okay, before we do that, and by this call parameter we can extract info whatever we collided. If the circle collided with that player game object, then player game object name, we can extract the name of the game object the circle collided with. Okay, we can extract info like name, tag, collider any component like rigid body, trail renderer, line render, anything we want by going to this other parameter, sorry, this call parameter. Okay, so if call is true means the circle is really collided with that player game object, means player should take damage now. Okay, so before player should take damage, let's print out a message in the console. Okay, so for printing out, let's type debug.log. Let's in quotation, let's say player should take damage. Okay, player should take damage, and close that up with semicolon. Okay, Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity now. Okay, it will take a bit of time, and once you've done, you are good to go. Sorry, I'm just having the tea. Okay, so it will take a few seconds. But the problem is that we're not able to see the circle. Okay, to see the circle we need to use another function, and we know it's called on draw gizmo selected. Okay, so let's go to script one more time and enter this function on draw gizmo selected. Okay, if it's not included, go to the bottom and type on draw gizmo selected and use that function. Okay, so over here underneath we will draw the circle. To draw the circle we need to type gizmos. Okay, gizmos dot draw where sphere. Okay, and this function over here will draw the circle, and it will take two arguments. Firstly, it will take the position from where you want to draw, and the second thing, it will take the radius, okay, of that circle. So let's pass our attack point dot position from where we want to draw the circle, and attack radius, the radius of that circle. Okay, attack radius, and close that up with semicolon. But the problem is that it will throw us an error if you haven't dragged this attack point to this attack point field. Basically this one is empty or none. So this function over here will still check out that point and try to draw the circle around that point. As you can see, attack point dot position with attack radius. Okay, but we do know if you haven't assigned, this function will still try to find that point. But if you haven't assigned it or not drag it yet, attack point to attack point field, so this over here attack point will be empty. So that's why it will throw us an error. Okay, because this function will still try to draw the circle from that attack point, and we do know if we haven't assigned it. Oh, okay, so this function will not get the attack point position. Okay, so that's why it will throw us an error. So before we draw the circle, we need to check if we assign it or not. Okay, so we will check if attack point is equals to null. Okay, if attack point is equals to null, basically means attack point is equals to null, means that field attack point field is empty, which says none. Okay, if we haven't dragged it yet to that point, but we know we drag it that. In case you haven't dragged it, basically that attack point field is empty. Okay, so in that situation we should stop drawing because we don't have attack point or we haven't yet assigned it yet. So in that situation we will type return. Okay, so after return, we know whatever line of code you write, it will not be executed. So the circle will be stopped drawing if we haven't assigned it. Okay, and you can choose the color of the circle. It's totally up to you. So I will choose the color. To choose that color, you have to type gizmos.color. Okay, and you can set equal to any color you want, like color dot red, color dot green. It's totally up to you. So I will choose color dot red. Okay, and close that up with semicolon. Control S to save your code, and let's move to Unity. Okay, let's move to Unity. We should able to see this message, player should take damage when enemy just attacking on our player game object and the circle is colliding with our player game object. In that situation, this message should pop out in the console. Okay, because player is taking damage from enemy because enemy just attacking. Okay, so let's go to Unity one more time. So as you can see, we are able to now see our circle, but we have to adjust upon it. How you can do that? So let's select this patrol enemy. Let's choose this attack animation clip. I guess okay, the circle is fine. Just match up the radius of this circle. Uh, just length of the sword. Okay, length of the sword you have to assign it. Okay, it's totally up to you how much you want a radius of your circle. Okay, and now if I hit this play button, and when this patrol enemy attack on our player game object, that message should pop out in the console because this circle will collide our player game object because player is close enough to our enemy patrol enemy, as you can see. But the problem is that we're not able to see that message. It should pop up. Okay, the catch is that we haven't called this function yet. Okay, we made the function, we never calling it, so that's why this line of code not getting executed. Okay, not getting called, or this message not getting popped up in the console. Okay, so let's go to Unity one more time. So where should we call when the enemy attacks, and in perfect accurate time we need to call that attack function. And we know attack function firstly checking if the circle is really colliding with this player game object, then this player will take damage, or that message we just printing out says player takes damage. Okay, player should take damage, I guess. Okay, player should take damage. So we need to call that attack function. But where we should call, select this patrol enemy, go to animation tab, then select attack. So over here this will be perfect time to call that attack function. Okay, so to call this, click go to left side in the parameter tab. Okay, sorry, go to left. Over here it says add event. Okay, so click on it, and in the top right inspector you can see no function selected. So let's choose the function. So we made the function in petrol enemy script, so let's go over to our petrol enemy script. Then methods basically means function. Okay, and as you can see we are able to see our attack function, so let's choose. Okay, now we have chosen that function. Okay, sorry, I will drag this. This will be accurate time to call. Now select this console, let's hit this play button. That message will pop up in the console, says player should take damage. If the player enemy petrol enemy circle is really colliding with this player game object, then the message should pop up. As you can see, because this circle just colliding with this player, as you can see. Okay, the message getting popped up. So instead of printing out message, this player, okay, our player game object should take damage. To take damage, let's open up our take damage function, or the player script. Okay, so as you can see we made in the bottom this take damage function, and this take damage function just subtracting from our max health by this amount of damage. Okay, so we need to call this function right over here, where the enemy just attacking correctly. Okay, we need to call this function, and we know this function just subtracting from our player max health by some unit, this damage parameter. Okay, so let's call this take damage function, where we should call when the enemy attacks or the circle collided with this player game object. That means player just enemy just attacking on our player. Okay, so let's open up this petrol enemy script. Okay, so we just printing out message. So let's go to scroll down to the bottom. As you can see we just printing out message when the circle is colliding with that player game object. So instead of printing out message player should take damage, we means we need to call that take damage function from our player script, and we know what take damage function is doing. It's just subtracting from our max health by some unit. Okay, so let's remove this message. Instead we will go to call. Okay, and by this call we can extract info whatever circle collided with. We can extract info the script, the setting on the game object the circle collided with. We can access the script, anything we can. So in our case we will get, so dot call dot get component, and the component we are looking for player, and we know in player script we made the take damage function, so that's why. Okay, so let's go to players. We just getting the player script. Okay, and we know in player script, so make first bracket dot, we made that take damage function public. So let's call this that function over here. Okay, so let's call it take damage function, and make first bracket. As a damage parameter you can pass any value you like. So if you pass 1, sorry, if you pass 1, then it will subtract from our max health by 1 unit. So if we call that take damage function for the first time, we know player have 5 amount have a health, so 5 minus 1 will be 4. Okay, it will go to 4. If you pass 2, so 5 minus 2 will be 3. So the max health will drastically change. Okay, or drastically gonna shrink it down. So instead passing 2, I will pass 1. So every single frame it will every attack from our player max health we just subtracting 1. Okay, and close that off with semicolon, control S to save your code. So when the enemy attacks we calling this function from our player script take damage. Okay, so control S on your keyboard to save your code, and we should able to see that player will lose all of his health when this petrol enemy game object attacks 5 times, because as a default value we have passed this max health of our player game object 5. You can pass any value you like. Okay, so if I select this player game object and then debug mode. Okay, to go to debug mode, what you need, go to right in the lock icon you can see 3 dots, just click on it and select this debug mode. Okay, Debug mode, basically, if you make any field private, you able to see that field as well. Okay, so over here max health we have 5. Now if I hit this play button and enemy attacks on our player game object 5 times, so this will go to 0. And if our player game object max health hit 0, we just printing out player died message. Okay, let me show you. 3 2 1 and then 0. As you can see, player died. Okay, so instead of printing out message player died, what we need to destroy this player game object. Okay, this player game object right after it, okay. So I hope you get the idea. So let's go to normal mode one more time. How you can just attack or assign some amount of health, it's totally up to you. Okay, I hope you get the idea.